The JMF Advisors Show is a podcast for business owners, C-suite executives, and entrepreneurs who are looking to build, grow, or even exit a business.
We bring in some of our best financial advisors to interview experts on business best practices, hot topics, and sprinkle in some tax and accounting help.
If you're a business owner, startup founder, CFO, or just starting your side hustle, this podcast is for you. All right, well, welcome back, Kim. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Bobby.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit today, kind of setting up all new businesses. We get a lot of questions, when somebody's kind of got that first idea as to, hey, I think I want to turn either. Sometimes it's a side hustle, sometimes it's a hobby, or sometimes, hey, I just want to start a business. What are kind of those next steps to start? And a lot of times they either go to their lawyer or their accountant, just point me in the right direction.
Right, or they really should go to both.
Yeah. Well, if they send you to, if you go to one, normally they send you to the, make sure you go over here.
Right, go see the other guy.
So we're going to kind of go through sort of some of those thoughts and things to hit as you're kind of going through that new business setup process. I don't know if some folks may know or not, I'm the chairman of the EDGE Advisory Board, which is, the EDGE is a business incubator for all of West Alabama. So if you're starting a business really anywhere here, whether it's in the community, in outer community, you can go there and they will really help start. So we meet a lot of startup founders and entrepreneurs there. And then, we also direct them to their accountants or lawyers. So I know you see a lot of those as well.
Yeah, it's really rewarding to see someone take an idea that they have or a talent and decide to start a business and grow it from the bottom up. And it's very rewarding for us to work with those people and make them successful, help them be a success. Right.
Yeah, a lot of times the whatever that idea is, I mean, sometimes it's, making cakes to, making software. They're really good at whatever that thing is, making software or making cakes, but they've, never had to set up a general ledger or,
don't even know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Fill out payroll.
Right.
Like I always get a paycheck. I don't have to do all the other stuff around it. So it's a new experience for a lot of folks.
Yeah. And it can be overwhelming. And that's the reason why a good start is, talking with an accountant or an attorney just to figure out, how to get a federal ID number or how even to set up the business, because there are several ways that you can start a business.
Right.
The simplest form, there are basically four forms of business. There's a sole proprietorship, an LLC, an S corporation, and then a C corporation.
Okay.
And I've kind of named those out from the simplest to the more complex.
Okay. So the further down the list you go, the harder they are to get done. Okay. Got it.
Or maybe the bigger the business is.
Okay.
Too. For a sole proprietorship, that's just going to be, we call them a Schedule C business. That's going to be a business that's reported on your individual return. And it's a cash basis business. The owner will not receive a paycheck. They'll take their net profit out. Right. So basically, whatever income comes in and expenses are paid, that net amount is what's taxed on their individual return. And it offers, the downside of a sole proprietorship is that you don't have any kind of limited liability. So in other words, let's say you have a business making cakes or whatever, and you're in a storefront and someone falls in that storefront, then they can sue you personally since you're not set up as a LLC or a corporation.
Okay, yeah.
So the next type business is an LLC.
Right.
And it can act as a partnership or a corporation. If you make a designation, it acts like a sole proprietorship. If an individual owns 100% of an LLC, it's going to be reported on their individual return on that Schedule C.
Right.
But since you've organized as an LLC, then you have limited liability. So again,
the LL is limited liability.
Limited Liability Corporation.
There you go. Okay.
Okay. So if it's So, like I said, you can have 100% owned by an individual for an LLC, or you can have multi-members.
Right.
So, let's say you and your brother are going into business together. Y'all can form an LLC, and then that LLC is going to be filed on a partnership return, unless you make a designation to treat it as a corporation. So that LLC has flexibility to either be a partnership or a corporation, depending on how you set it up.
And then if we want to bring in a third partner
That's
at
right.
some point, we want Kim to join the crew, you can then change your ownership percentages
That's right.
of the LLC.
That's
Got it.
right.
Okay.
That's right. And LLCs can start out as a single member, but maybe you need to take on a partner. So the LLC vehicle is a little bit more forgiving rather than a corporation, because you can admit members easily.
Right. Okay. And
Now-
that's the one we see most commonly.
Yes.
Okay.
And most LLCs, we would recommend an LLC is a great vehicle to own a piece of property. Again, it affords you the limited liability in case an accident happens. They can only get, if someone sues, they would only be able to go against the assets held in that entity.
Right.
They wouldn't be able to go against your personal assets.
Gotcha.
So in other words, if you've got a condo that you rent, or any kind of building, a piece of property that you own, it's a good idea, consult with your attorney.
Right.
But typically it's a good idea to place it in an LLC.
Right. Gotcha.
Then the last two, you have what's called an S corporation. In the old days, we called it a sub S corporation, but it's an S corporation. And a lot of individuals like to receive a paycheck and pay their income taxes through withholding.
Right.
And so the S corporation would allow you to give yourself, the owner can receive a paycheck.
Okay.
Unlike in an LLC, you're going to get taxed on the net profit of the company, and you're going to pay self-employment tax if it's ordinary income, right?
Right.
With an S corporation, it kind of just gives you, you're going to pay yourself a reasonable salary, and you can have withholdings there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then the lastly is C corporation. Usually small companies are not going to choose to be a C corporation, because the downside of a C corp is that double taxation.
Okay.
So a C corp is taxed at the corporate level, and then if you pull any money out of it, you're going to be taxed on it again.
Right.
So
That's the one where people, when people think of big companies in
That's
the
right.
stock market or whatever, generally speaking,
Right.
that's what they are.
yeah,
Yep.
and foreign corporations have to be a C corp.
Yeah.
So that's typically where you're going to see that.
Okay, so those are the decisions really on which ones of those from an accounting perspective or a tax perspective,
Right.
mostly. And then, your lawyer will probably give you the perspective related to it from a legal perspective.
That's correct.
So that's why I think we started
Yeah.
this conversation. You're going to start with one of those two, and normally you're going to get sent to the other.
That's right.
So once you've made that election, and you do that election through the Secretary of State office in your state,
Right.
so then you've got articles of incorporation and things like that. What's the next step?
Well, you're going to want to, let's just say you didn't, you decided you didn't want to be, let's just start with the simplest, like a sole proprietorship.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to want to get a federal identification number.
Okay.
And that federal identification number is going to allow you to open a bank account. And from a accounting standpoint, even the simplest business needs to have a standalone bank account that they run all of their transactions through.
Okay.
So they're going to want to open a bank account. You're going to want to go online to irs.gov, and you'll be able to see it there. Need a federal identification number.
Right.
You can do all of this online, and you'll have that ID number back within a day.
Okay. So for the business, it's like your Social Security number, but
Right.
for the business.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So it's separate from your Social Security number. You're all good.
Right.
All right. So that's step 2, I guess, in this process
Yes.
from your perspective. Okay.
Yeah.
What happens once you've got that?
Well, once you get that federal ID number, now I said let's start with the simplest, but let's go back and let's say you're an LLC.
Right.
The state of Alabama requires you to file what's called an initial business privilege tax return.
Okay.
And this is a tax return that gives you the right to transact business in Alabama. And so that return is due 2 months and 15 days after the date you're organized. So sole proprietorships do not have to file this.
Okay.
Any LLC, S corporation, C corporation, they are required to
Okay.
file this initial privilege tax return. And it's triggered when your articles of organization for an LLC or your articles of incorporation are filed at the probate judge's office.
Okay.
So if you don't file this return, they're going to send you a notice and say, hey, you owe us for this. And so the initial fee is for LLCs, it's going to be $100. And for corporations, it's going to be $110 because you have to pay a $10 annual Secretary of State fee.
Okay.
So you're going to want to make sure, it's always fun when a client comes in 6 months after the fact and says, when I was organizing this business, my attorney told me to come see you because there was some form I was supposed to file and I didn't file it. And so the late fee for filing that
Right.
BPT late is $50. So, $50 is $50, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you go from 100 to 150.
That's right. Just like that. A day late is $150.
Right. That's frankly the question I think I hear the most often is, "Hey, we started an LLC this year in June." And
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah.
Time
Yeah,
to-
we hear that too. And that also lets me know they've probably not set up their books correctly, from the get-go.
Right.
I also wanted to go back with that federal ID number is going to be used for everything that you transact business with the IRS. So when you do payroll, like if you have employees, it's all going to be centered around that federal ID number.
Right.
So-
Okay. And like if you're an employee, that federal ID number is on your W-2 when
That's
you
right.
get it. Yeah. Okay. So that's how they keep everything in track.
That's it.
Yep. Okay. Are there different types of income tax elections related to some of those?
Yeah. So let's say that you formed an LLC and you, with your attorney, and then you go see your accountant and they're like, that S corporation looks a little bit more attractive for you. You can file an election even as an LLC to be taxed as an S corporation. And those S elections are due the 15th day of the third month of the year that you want to be taxed as an S corporation. So in other words, for 2022, those elections were due March 15th, 2022. If you started transacting business in January, right?
Okay.
You can file late. So unlike the BPT, there's no fee for this election, and there are some relief provisions if you don't make that timely. There used to not be.
Okay.
And the reason why that we appreciate those late relief elections now is that if you didn't make your S corporation election timely, then you're going to be taxed as a C corporation.
Oh, okay.
So it's now a little, most of the time you can perfect those if you failed to make that election.
Gotcha. We get a lot of questions locally about business licenses, so
Yeah.
let's talk business licenses.
Yes. So if you're going to transact business in the city of Tuscaloosa, you're going to need to buy a business license annually for the first year that and you need to get that immediately.
Yeah.
If you need to figure out if you're in the city limits. You need to figure out if you're just in the police jurisdiction. So you're going to want to, and even if like you're in the city of Northport or the city of Birmingham, you're going to want to go to wherever your business hub is,
Right.
and you're going to want to get your business license. You also want to keep in mind that let's say you have a business of, power washing.
Yep.
Power washers that clean. So those people aren't going to stay at that one hub,
Right.
where their office is. They're going to go out to different places.
Right.
Hopefully they've got crews and they're going out to all kinds of places. If every city that you go in is going to require you to obtain a license to do business in that city.
Okay.
So you just want to be cognizant of the fact that you're probably going to have more than one business license. So let's just say that you're located in the city of Tuscaloosa and you buy your city of Tuscaloosa license. And let's say that you go to Birmingham to work. For licensing purposes in the city of Tuscaloosa, all of they're called worldwide gross receipts. All of your receipts are taken into account when you're figuring your business license.
Okay.
But that job that you've got in Birmingham, your license in Birmingham is only going to include those receipts that you earn in Birmingham.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Got it. And then, so that same company could conceivably have Northport and Fayette.
That's
and
right.
you name it.
Yeah. And typically we'll say, maybe it's a one-off and you go there one time to do a job. But if it's habitual,
Right.
definitely we need a business license.
Okay.
And there are, if your business is one where you're selling goods and services and you make deliveries in your vehicle, and you deliver to Fayette 25 times, or, there's not a bright line cutoff, but let's just say that's one of your regular routes, then you're going to want to buy that Fayette business license, right? But if you just go to Selma once, there is relief. You can buy a delivery license.
Oh, okay.
And so that delivery license is a lot less than a regular business license.
Gotcha. I
Oh, I also want to mention
Sure.
that some cities, we talked earlier about rental properties. So some cities have rental license taxes, which is kind of weird because all it is really a business license. For example, the city of Tuscaloosa, if you have a commercial piece of property and you rent it to someone, you lease it, then you're required to pay a license tax, which is still kind of strange, but a license tax on those rental receipts that you receive.
Okay. So is that an Airbnb situation? Is that what you're thinking?
No, not residential.
Okay.
This is commercial.
Okay.
Now, some cities do have residential, so you'll just need to check. Unfortunately, every city can pass their own ordinances as it applies to business licenses, right?
Okay.
So you're going to have to check to see if you're required to buy that license.
Okay. So probably just for kind of most people to cover, you're going to have wherever the home base is for the business, you want to check through all of those types of
Exactly.
things.
And if municipalities are used to these questions all the time, and they know the code backward and forward, right, as it applies to business licenses. So I always just say go to the city,
Right.
municipal revenue collector, commissioner, or whatever, and ask the questions to make sure that you're properly licensed.
Yeah. So a lot of new, particularly since 2020 and pandemic, people were at home.
Yep.
A lot of people started online businesses and they were selling whatever they were making. So you're starting to see a lot more online sales. And so what really triggers, okay, I got to collect sales tax and got to remit sales tax sometimes in all sorts of jurisdictions.
Yeah, sales tax is so much fun.
Yeah. I don't want to get too far down. I'm sure we'll have an entire podcast on sales tax and things like that. But, at a high level, what are the things to keep an eye on?
Well, when you sell a tangible piece of property to an end user, that triggers sales tax. Now, one-time sales would not trigger sales tax. Having a garage sale would not trigger sales tax. But if I make widgets and I sell my widgets to someone, then that should trigger sales tax.
Okay.
Where they take possession of the property.
Okay.
So with online sales, you're mailing those typically.
Yes.
So you're not physically going to the location where that person is and completing the sale. And like you said, we could have a whole podcast on sales taxes. But the long and short of it is, if you don't have what's called nexus, and nexus equals physical presence, then you're not required to collect that sales tax on that item.
Okay.
Now, the person who buys that item and does not pay sales tax on it should really pay use tax on that item.
In their home jurisdiction. And there actually is on the Alabama income tax return, there's a line that says, did you make any purchases for which sales tax was not paid? And you claim it and you pay it on your individual return. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that entire podcast on sales tax nexus and whatnot.
It's just it's the most difficult. People think income tax is difficult, and it is.
Yeah.
But it's nothing to compare to sales tax.
Right.
And even after 20-something years of being a CPA and working with sales tax, and probably I'm like one of the people at the firm that's the go-to for it. I mean, I still look up everything.
Yeah.
Almost everything, because there's no way that you could know everything there is to know about sales tax.
And like you said earlier, the really local finite jurisdictions can enact their own.
They're all different.
Right.
They're all different.
So, I mean, you really have to and get involved down at that level.
Right.
So
and there are different rates for different types of property.
Right.
So, yeah, you really want to, if you're selling a good or service, or you're making or constructing, you really want to consult with a professional that knows about sales tax so that you can get set up properly at the beginning, and maybe they can give you a cheat sheet of what, they do owe and don't owe.
Right.
And get all set up. And I will say, for online sales, there are several programs that do a really good job of knowing whether or not you should be collecting sales tax on that sale.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you plug those in straight to your card.
That's
or
right.
What are those? Any?
Like I know Avalara or
Okay.
TaxJar.
Okay.
And I think Shopify even links with some of those. So, it's not as bad as it was like 10 years ago when we were, all forging this frontier of
Right.
people
Wild,
selling
wild
online.
west.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And the deal is, our sales tax laws were written when we did not even have computers. Right. So it's just,
no one contemplated in 1980 or whenever
figure.
that you might be selling something to someone you never met and never saw. And
right,
will
or
never
holding
see.
a phone in your hand that has that's a computer. They didn't even know what a computer was. So all of the digital items, it's just you're having to apply this law that's ancient to these things that no one even dreamed we could have.
Right.
So it's a real interesting world.
Right.
Sales tax is.
So we've gotten down. We sort of covered starting the business,
Right.
making some of those elections. Now you've started to. Any other things kind of that we should really talk to that startup entrepreneur, or that, hey, this is just my side. I still have my regular job, but I'm doing this on the side. Anything?
Well, I think that, I mentioned earlier that it's really important to have a bank account that you run all those transactions through. And you probably want to have some kind of computerized method to keep up with your income and expenses. I mean, it's important for you because you don't want to overpay tax, right?
Right.
But also it helps to maybe help with that accounting bill when you
Right.
go at the end. The days of bringing in a big box with all of your stuff in it, your receipts. Yeah, that gets pretty expensive. So you really want to make sure you have everything in order so that your accountant can follow it and help you,
Right.
maximize your deductions,
Right.
minimize your income.
Right. So that's like, I guess when we kind of go back to that Schedule C discussion earlier, particularly sole proprietor, if you don't track any of your expenses, you're going to get taxed on
That's
all
right.
of and you have to pay not only the net income, or at that point, there's no netting because
Right.
there's no expenses, right? You also have to pay self-employment
Which is
tax.
15.2% in addition to your regular income tax rate.
Right. So
So it adds up.
so keeping track of those deductions is key.
Very important.
Yeah.
Very important.
Okay. Any other little things that we wanted to highlight on starting a new business?
I think that's it. But just communication's key, and make sure you get that advisor that you trust that can hold your hand through the
Right.
beginning, so that it's just second nature when you get to the second year.
Yeah, I would say one of the things really to think about there, you may only start one business or two businesses in your life,
Right.
whereas that lawyer and that accountant, and even people at business incubators, they're seeing
Yeah.
30 people a month that are starting various things, so they've gone through a lot of that. I mean, look, some people need help just start opening up a bank account.
That's right.
So, I think it's wise to get people that do it all the time to kind of help you through that process. I know that we would walk you through that process in a meeting, and it doesn't cost you anything
That's right.
to start. Just kind of point you in the right direction at the point at which you're like, hey, I don't want to do that business privilege tax return on my own. Okay, that's when fees start
That's right.
to occur. But you're certainly, I would say everyone's capable of filing that return initially by themselves. And then the Secretary of State office has things for you
That's
you
right.
can do on your own as well. So it's really up to that new business owner, I think, to start. All right, well, that's awesome. I think a lot of our, this will be something that folks can listen to and really help get them on the way, navigate that starting a business process.
Sounds great, Bobby.
All right, thanks for coming in.
All right.
If you would like us to help your business or would like to suggest additional podcast topics, simply send an email to info@jmf.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and your favorite audio podcast apps.